rant is going to be about preachers and preaching, and I call it the Ravi effect. And I know that sounds a little cringe to some of you guys, but it is what it is. Ravi effect for me is when the preacher is so good that you're more impressed by the messenger more than the message. And let me explain. Ravi had this effect. The way he preached and the way he taught and his intellect and all of it, it's just a package deal, but the way he taught was so unique that you'd end up becoming more impressed by Ravi than by what he was saying. And this is what happened to me personally. When I was a young Christian, I read a lot of Ravi. I bought, I think, more than 6 of his books, 5 or 6 of his books. I listened to almost all the stuff that he said, and I was so impressed. In fact, my favorite book by Ravi is Jesus Among Other Gods, and there was another one about reductionism, Rumors of Another World. I loved those 2 books. And of course, I Isaac, Take Thee, Rebecca. So those were my top 3 books from Ravi. And as someone who came from, Catholicism and then atheism and then New Age and then studying different world religions, Jesus Among Other Gods was a book that really changed my life and really helped me understand why Christianity is believable and reliable compared to other religions. And it really benefited me a lot. And so at the beginning, at the onset, Ravi was very helpful to me. Ravi was such a prolific person, but his stuff helped me grow as a Christian. And eventually, as time goes by, you keep listening to Ravi and you begin to not even notice or realize that you're now more impressed by Ravi than the gospel. You come out of Ravi conferences and Ravi lectures and Ravi YouTube videos impressed by Ravi more than Jesus himself. That is what I call the Ravi effect. It doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen fast. It begins with you being genuinely ministered unto, being genuinely encouraged to seek Jesus and to seek God and all of that. And then eventually your love for God and your focus on Christ, I don't know how to describe it, but either your focus begins to go to Ravi, or the way he talks and speaks and teaches, kind of like Satan trying to get glory from God. It's like that. There's that impression. And let me explain something. When it comes to the Ravi effect, I realize now as a preacher, and this is my advice to preachers, other preachers out there, and to people who enjoy listening to sermons and preachings. Obviously, that's majority of Christians, I hope, I'm assuming. When it comes to preaching, there are 2 kinds of preachers. One kind of preacher does his best to minister to people because he wants people to grow. That's it. The intention is for people to grow. Then there's another kind of preacher who does his best to minister to others. Let's not make the mistake of saying they don't want you to grow. The second kind of preacher also wants you to grow. They genuinely want you to grow. But the reason is different. The reason is not because they're concerned for your growth. The reason is because you guys become his trophy. Okay? The more genuine your growth is because of his efforts, the more genuine your endorsement and compliments that will go to him. And so his intention for ministering to you is to show to the world and boast to the world that they are great ministers, they are great preachers, that they are the best speakers and counselors out there. So the first kind of preacher, the intention is for you to grow. They don't care about the glory. They don't care about whatever. They just want you to grow because they genuinely love you. The second kind of preacher genuinely wants you to grow also because they want you to be their trophies, their praise singers, their glorifiers. They want you to become their worship leaders. That's really the second type, and that's their goal. And that's what I'm so afraid of when it comes to the Ravi effect. Because the Ravi effect doesn't happen overnight. It's very subtle. It creeps into your heart. And so what happens is, at first you're so genuinely seeking God, and then eventually your loyalty goes no longer from God to God, but your loyalty goes to the preacher. Now, I want to contrast that to John MacArthur. John MacArthur is one of my favorite preachers as well, but here's something ironic with John MacArthur. When you listen to his sermons, it's very, his tone is very flat. Like, he just speaks. He just kind of almost feels like it's just reading a manuscript. That's it. Now, I listened to the Strange Fire Conference, and the Q&A, John MacArthur is there. And in the Q&A, John MacArthur is very witty. He's very funny. He's got a great personality. He's very personable. He's very charismatic. He's got all these funny jokes. He can quickly think of a remark to make people laugh. So John MacArthur is a very smart, witty guy. But in his sermons, he's intentionally holding back his personality. Some of it comes out, but he's intentionally holding back all of the bravado and the showmanship and the jokes and the sarcasm and the wit. And I'm not saying you should hold back everything. I'm not saying you should never joke. You should never make a humorous remark in your sermon. I'm not saying you should never ever, let your personality out. All I'm saying is be very careful that you're not putting on a show if you're a preacher. Because a lot of preachers, that's what they do. I know a lot of people who learn how to speak well, and then that's what they do in the sermon. So they know how to raise the voice, they lower the voice, they know the dramatic pause. So they'll say something like this, just to, give a cringy example. All right, they'll say something like, God loves not just me, but you, and you, and you. You know what I mean? Like, there's showmanship. There are these types of preachers who know how to regulate the voice, to make the voice sound deeper, to, just showmanship should never be part of preaching. Preaching has more to do with loving God, loving people, making sure that people get to know God and love God more, and not making people realize how good you are as a preacher, how wonderful your messages are, how smartly you constructed the application point, how brilliantly you created this sentence where everything is easy to remember. And he's such a great analogist, he's such a great illustration guy, or he's such a great storyteller, blah blah blah. Like, just be very careful of that. Try to remove yourself from the message as best you can. Now, if you have to tell a story a certain way, explain something a certain way, give narratives, illustrations, analogies a certain way, please hold back on things that you realize might be a distraction. When they go home, they'll remember the illustration more than the message. They'll remember your analogies and your stories more than Jesus. They'll remember more about you than about the cross, and that is so wrong. Okay, so just be careful about that. All right, so I got a little strong there, so I'm sorry. But yeah, that's all I want to say for today. God bless you guys.